Michael Mann drops by today, one of the world's leading climate scientists, to talk about how far we've come or not as a result of this pandemic shutting down, a lot of the industrial activity around the planet. It's fascinating. Check this out. Leave your comments, ding the bell, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel. One of the finest scientists in the world, one of the top scientists, would be with us. And his credentials are constantly right. Michael Mann, in addition to writing dire predictions, understanding climate change, the hockey stick and the climate wars, dispatches from the front lines. He basically invented the hockey stick that Al Gore popularized. His book, The Madhouse Effect, with Tom Tolles. His children's book, The Tantrum That Saved the World. Now, this press release from Penn State University. Dr. Michael Mann, Distinguished Professor of Atmospheric Sciences and Director of Penn State's Earth Systems Science Center at Penn State, has been elected to the National Academy of Sciences, recognizing distinguished and continuing achievements in original research. Membership in the NAS is one of the highest honors given to any scientist or engineer in the United States. By the way, the National Academy of Sciences was established in 1863, signed into law by President Lincoln, specifically to recognize achievement in science, and then basically to ask those people who are members of the Academy to be advisors in the areas of science, engineering, health policy, et cetera, science basically, to be advisors to the federal government and any agency that may need help from the federal government. I mean, this is incredible. Dr. Michael Mann, congratulations, sir. Michael Mann, MANN.net, by the way, is the website. Michael, thank you so much for being with us today, and congratulations.
Thank you, Tom. Always a pleasure, my friend.
I have a bunch of questions. The first, and I think this is a kind of a broad one for you being one of the top climate scientists on the planet, is has this level of economic shutdown, we were warned 2-3 years ago that we had 10 years. The IPCC said, you guys don't get your emissions down to this level within 10 years, all hell is going to break loose. And I'm wondering, I take a walk now, the sky is clear, I can see Mount Hood down, 100 miles away as if it was next door. There are literally no jet trails in the sky. We live near an airport, maybe one plane takes off an hour. Are we there yet? I mean, has the coronavirus shut down world activity? Has it taken us to 100% of the IPCC's goal for 2020, or are we only 50%? I mean, and what does this tell us about what we need to do going forward to achieve those goals?
Yeah, all great questions. And the reality is, somewhat sobering. What feels like a shutdown of our entire economy, and certainly a very substantial decrease in transportation and carbon emissions generated from transportation. What seems like life-changing changes in lifestyle have only gotten us about maybe 6 to 8% reduction in carbon emissions. And we need to bring those carbon emissions down by 10% every year for the next decade if we're going to avoid crossing that threshold of dangerous planetary warming. So that gives you an idea of the challenge, the monumental challenge that we face here. Even these, what feel like draconian changes in lifestyle haven't even gotten us the 10% that we need for this year. And then we've got to go beyond that, another 10% next year, and even further cuts, another 10% the next year. What this drives home for me, and I think a lot of my colleagues, is that individual behavioral change, it's part of the solution, but that alone isn't going to get us where we need to go. If we're going to achieve those sorts of reductions, then we need support at the highest level. We need governmental policies that will incentivize a shift away from fossil fuels to renewable energy, and we need politicians, right, who are actually going to support those policies, who are going to do what's right for us and the planet rather than what's in the best interest of the powerful vested interests who often fund their campaigns.
So it sounds to me like the essence of what you're saying, Dr. Mann, is that we have used a relatively blunt instrument, this brute force thing of everybody just stay home for 3 months now to bend the curve down by 6%. But we've got to hit 10%. The Republicans and the fossil fuel industry are going to say, okay, you've got another Great Depression as a result of just 6%, and you want more? And your response sounds to me like what you're saying is, yes, we can get a larger carbon emission reduction without the Great Depression by doing it smart instead of doing it with a sledgehammer.
That's exactly right, Tom. In fact, it's the opposite, right, of what the talking points of the critics would hold. Actually, as we know, moving to renewable energy generates all sorts of new jobs. It's good for the economy, and obviously it's much better for the planet. So it's win-win. There's no reason not to do it. The only obstacle right now is, as I alluded to, the fact that we have fossil fuel interests who are currently essentially running our government under the Trump administration. We need to replace that government. We have an election coming up in months. We need to vote in politicians who will act on this problem before it's too late, before we truly do destroy the livability of this planet for future generations.
Yeah, well, given that a coal lobbyist is running the Environmental Protection Agency and an oil lobbyist is running the Interior Department, I would say we're a full capture here. Another story that has been haunting me is, and it's popped up all over the place. It started in the science magazines and it's migrated into the popular press. Is that the so-called wet bulb temperature of 35 degrees Celsius? This is, wet bulb is where basically it's so hot and the humidity is so high that humans cannot evaporate perspiration enough to cool themselves down. It's the old, it doesn't feel hot in Arizona because the air is so dry. But, even 10 degrees, even something in the 90s rather than in the hundreds, if you're surrounded by 80% humidity, will kill you. That this is going to be the new normal for much of the equatorial regions of the planet and could endanger literally billions of humans. Can you tell us about that? What is the state of this science? How certain is it? What kind of time frame are you looking at?
Yeah, sure. So this recent study highlights this problem, but it's something that we've known. The fact is a warmer atmosphere holds more moisture. So in general, you get more humid conditions in places like the tropics, and it gets hotter. So it gets hotter and more humid. And we all know from our own experiences that it's those very hot, very humid summer days that really do a number on us, that make it very difficult to be outside, to be active. And as you allude to, that becomes the new normal. Think of the hottest, most humid summer day you've ever experienced. We'll simply call that summer by mid-century. That will be the typical conditions that we expect to see in the summer here, even in the mid-latitudes, if we continue on the path that we're on. And there are regions, a large swath in the tropics, where that combination of heat and humidity will literally be deadly. It will be too hot and humid for human beings. And so what we're talking about, as we all know, is less space, less land for us because the tropics become unlivable, because our coastlines become flooded. Some of our largest coastal regions become flooded because of sea level rise. So there's less land, there's less fresh water, there's less food, and there's 7.8 billion and growing people on this planet. That's a prescription for a disaster if we don't do something now.
And by doing something, I'm assuming you're talking about getting carbon emissions under control.
Yeah, I'm talking about voting Donald Trump out of office, of course. But no, absolutely. That's the first step. But what we need, indeed, is policies at the highest level. We need the U.S. to actually become a leader again when it comes to the worldwide effort to avert catastrophic climate change. And we had that leadership under Barack Obama. Sure, we can fault certain policies here or there, but we were on the right track. And of course, under Trump, we've headed off in the wrong direction now.